This week, since Eric is gone, I've just been focusing on the news in particular, and we're going to cover the biggest headlines of the week. So the type of things that we're going to cover today are Cyberpunk 2077 getting its long-awaited next-gen update with weirdly little fanfare, and I think there's a good reason for that actually. But we'll talk about that. Talk about Bioshock finally getting a movie adaptation that's long been talked about and long been strived for from multiple directors at this point, trying to adapt one of the best video game franchises, at least story-wise, into a movie. So we might finally see that in the next year or so. So we'll talk about that. And who can forget that Horizon Forbidden West is getting a launch tomorrow. We're not game reviewers. I'd love to talk more about the game. I haven't played it yet, so I can't really say anything about it, just beyond what reviews are saying so far, because the embargo was lifted. What we'll give you is just launch details. If you're looking at buying it soon, I'll tell you when it goes live. I'll tell you how much you can pay for it, how to get the best deal on it, and just a few more of the smaller details. The last two topics are Valve being very Valve-like. So as anybody's been paying attention, Valve has a new Steam Deck that just went on sale officially a couple weeks ago. And with that, they've taken a very strange approach to how they're going to handle accessories. So we'll talk about that. It's a very Valve-like thing is all I can say right now, but I'll go into why I mean that. And then the last thing is we're going to talk about Nintendo again. Unfortunately, this is not like hey, Nintendo's got some great games that we want to talk about, or, they're looking at the Switch Pro or Switch 2 or whatever. Instead, this is Nintendo's ongoing crusade against hackers. In a kind of an unfortunate way, Nintendo has been very aggressive against anything it doesn't like. And so even though the facade is Mario and fun times, they're quite aggressive against anybody that crosses them the wrong way. And this is anything from people who review games poorly by using their video content and issuing DMCA takedowns to going after people who are using the likeness of their characters or music in the way that they don't appreciate or haven't officially sanctioned. Going after fan games, and then finally going after hackers who are creating workarounds to basically get ROMs of their games functioning on their hardware. They have not taken kindly to it, and neither has the U.S. Justice Department or Japanese Justice Department for that matter. And so we'll go over the details of the case against Gary Bowser, fitting name, I guess, but we'll talk about that whole case. So if you're interested in all that, tune in. We make our videos available after we stream on YouTube, so you can check it out there at Sonic Bloom TV. If you are paying attention and following along, right now I have commenting abilities. So if you comment on YouTube or Twitch, I will eventually see it and I will respond to it. So follow along and we'll jump right into it. I hope. Well, we will. All right, so the first bit of news. Cyberpunk 2077 finally got its next-gen update. Weirdly, it was with very little fanfare. So if you haven't been following along, Cyberpunk 2077 hyped itself up quite well through multiple E3s and then finally launching in 2020, late 2020, I want to say. Yeah, that's correct, because it was the year consoles released. So the new consoles released. So this in 2020 without a next-gen version of it, and when it released, it was quite buggy, and more disappointingly than anything else, CD Projekt Red during one of the E3s had shown like a hour-long gameplay segment that showed off what this game is like and what you can expect. It was a vertical slice, unlikely a vertical slice that was actually true gameplay. And the result was that what they showed to consumers to get them to buy into the game wasn't what they delivered. And to make matters worse, what they delivered on PS4, Xbox consoles, which were next gen consoles, so it was only PS4, PS4 Pro, and Xbox One, Xbox One X. Both of those, we had a plethora of issues that made them not the greatest gameplay experiences. And over time, they did patch it and make the game much more stable and much more enjoyable, but the damage was done. And to the gamer base that is quite vocal and thinks they're very entitled to things, they somewhat justifiably slammed the game, review bombed it, and kind of took away a lot of the energy that the Cyberpunk launch had. The unfortunate thing is that the CD Projekt Red at fault for showing a vertical slice they couldn't deliver, but part of their weird release of a game that was absolutely not ready was they're under the pressure of investors. CD Projekt Red has been taking investor money, and that investor money has to pay off at some point in time. And usually it's these investors that know nothing about game industry but are looking to cash in, likely on the success of Witcher and what that could do. So kneeling to investor pressure, CD Projekt Red released the game, and it was buggy, problematic, even going as far as PlayStation yanking it off their digital asset store. That is the short story. Now, I don't think I want to talk about how justified it was for people to be as angry as they are. I will say that the time and effort that the developers have probably put into the game, the ongoing time and effort they are into, trying to make the game as good as it can, we shouldn't direct the ire at that. They're doing the best they can. Other games have launched in rockier states and never achieved the sort of state that I'd say Cyberpunk is in currently. But if you are interested in picking it up, the good news is that if you own the PS4 version of the game and decided not to play it, to wait for then when they release the next gen version, well, that day has come. And the way CD Projekt Red kind of did it was they just gave people a heads up that there was going to be a next gen patch coming this year. It was supposed to be last year, but it kind of got punted from that, and it got released in 2022. I think most people were expecting it, but the sort of splash that I got was CD Projekt Red did like an hour long live cast showing off the details of the next gen patch, and it is quite robust. It's basically a brand new game that is using some version of the PC's like mid-range settings on Xbox Series X and on PlayStation 5. The cool part is that they're like a lot of games nowadays. They have two modes. They have a 60 frames per second that's mostly stable, and that's like their performance mode. It targets a lower resolution. It still uses dynamic 4K, but it probably more often than not is around 1440p. They also have a higher res version, which is a 30 frames per second version of the game. It hits a higher frame rate and uses ray traced shadowing. Basically, it's using rays to determine shadows of objects and where the light casts, which is actually really compelling. You can find a lot of kind of comparisons, but basically if they use bake lighting, the bake lighting as you travel through the city does weird updates as you're moving through the city, but the ray trace lighting doesn't have to load in a big texture, so you get a more natural presentation of the game. So if you've got an Xbox Series X or PS5, ray tracing mode might be the way to go into it, the 30 frames per second, unless you really want 60 frame per second gameplay. Then you'll kind of take a hit on some of the visual qualities, but you'll get a faster performing game. So for anybody who does have the PS4 or Xbox One X, the patch is free. It was one of their promises that they made to people once they kind of got the backlash from their initial release. So that's in there. You can pick up the game in a lot of cases for like under $30. So it's an awesome deal. The game has a ton of content, and it's not the worst game you can play. It's quite a polished AAA game. It just wasn't polished when it released. So if you're looking for huge value, picking it up might be one of the best gaming deals on the market right now. It's like 30 hours of gameplay for 30 some odd dollars. It's a PS5 game. So I don't know. I can't fault them for this. It's quite a good one. What's weird is the fanfare around their launch of the new patch. I have a feeling that they're kind of subduing it on purpose, in large part because I think they need to relaunch the game. Basically, my guess is around either the summer or whenever they're going to have printed PS5 discs and Xbox Series X discs of this game, they will do a relaunch. The price of the game will go up. You'll be able to buy the PS5 game for, I don't know, whatever it is, $60, $70, and you'll be able to own it. But right now, for anybody who bought the PS4 version or can buy a PS4 version for a lot less, you can get a great gaming deal. For those not in the know, it's going to look like a brand new game release to everybody else, and CD Projekt Red's probably going to try to recoup some of their losses from the huge development cost of this game and ongoing costs. Another fun thing is it's going to be free DLC. So part of their like apology tour that they're going on here is going to be giving, I think, 3 pieces of content to anybody who owns the game. So not only are you getting the base game that is huge, you're getting additional content as well. So like I said before, probably one of the best gaming deals as of right now. Even better if you picked up a brand new copy for like $15 when both like Target and Best Buy were trying to clear it out. So pick it up today. And if you can find a new copy of it cheap, like I said, great gaming deal. Hopefully no one takes too much offense to that, because I know there's a lot of hard feelings towards CD Projekt Red, but like I said, pick it up today, especially if you're a fan of CD Projekt Red. So next bit of information. Horizon Forbidden West is launching technically tomorrow. There's not much to go over it. As I said before, we're not reviewers. I do not have an advanced copy of the game. I have not played it yet. I have played the first one. It's a great game. And it's one of the probably biggest next-gen releases that we've had since, I don't know, Ratchet and Clank or Halo. It's a big one. And from all current reviews, it's quite satisfactory to everybody. The details about the release, it will be launching tonight at 12 a.m. Eastern time. So, midnight for those on the East Coast. The cool thing is if you're on the West Coast, it's 9 p.m. Pacific time today. You'll be able to start playing it. If you do pre-order it, which given current reviews, it's not a bad idea. The digital version you can pre-download as soon as you pay down the cash or put down money down. You'll be able to start downloading it right away. And it's kind of important because the download file without a patch is 88 gigabytes. So you'll need to have that much space available on your PS5 to be able to make use of it. If you have the PS4, I think it's even larger. But make that space available if you're looking at picking it up tonight. The PS5 version retails for $69.99, as most new PlayStation games are going for. The PS4 version retails for $59.99, typical last-gen prices. What is kind of an interesting caveat here is that the PlayStation had promised that the PS4 version would get a free upgrade to PS5. So if you own the PS4 version, the PS5 version is basically free. Unless you're a collector or something like that wants to have the PS5 disc for reasons, you can save yourself $10 by picking up the PS4 version, either on disc or digital. The difficult thing is if you go to your PS5 and look for Horizon Forbidden West, you're only going to find the PS5 version. It's not the most obvious, and this isn't actually like a weird thing. It's usually the case. You can't find PS4 games very easily if there's a PS5 version of the game on their store. But they may be taking extra steps to basically push you towards the $70 version and, coop the $10 on anybody who's looking to grab it. If you do want it, if you do want the lower price version and you only have a PS5, the best way to go about getting it is go to the web portal, not on your PlayStation, but on the web, sign into your PlayStation account, find the PS4 version, download the PS4 version to your PS5, and then when you pick up the PS5, select the PS5 version to download. So that's how you can get it for $10 off. Not the most straightforward thing. I think it's intentional, more or less, because I think Sony would rather take the $10 extra than not. But, if you're feeling generous and you want to make sure the devs get paid, paying the extra $10 is going to go to profit and to help the studio out who, made the game over the past, whatever it was, 5 years, I think, at this point. So, pick it up. I will say, too, that the review embargo, lifted this week, I think, on Monday or Tuesday. So we got, a flood of Metacritic, or a flood of reviews. The Metacritic score currently sits at 89. That's with 100 reviews. Most of them, obviously, are positive. So, as far as I can tell, it's a great game. And I can say for certain that the first game was really amazing in a lot of ways and did a lot of really interesting things, and somehow managed to justify robotic dinosaurs roaming around in a sci-fi way that wasn't totally weird. Somehow, if you haven't played it, you'll understand or if you've played it, you understand what I mean. If you haven't played it, it's a cool thing to discover throughout the game. It's probably one of the best features. So yeah, check it out. All right, next bit of news. Bioshock fans, we finally are getting a Bioshock movie, weirdly. And it came from Netflix, announced this week, I'm assuming because they have fresh ink on paper between 2K and Netflix. But yeah, we're finally getting a Bioshock movie. The weird thing is that it's a Bioshock movie's been in discussion forever. Even when it launched, shortly thereafter, I think Ken Levine was going around talking about the game and all of the amazing things it does for storytelling. And Gore Verbinski, I'm assuming, had played it, or maybe was in talks with Ken Levine or someone. But either way, there was discussions about turning it into a movie. I think they went so far as to come up with a budget and pitch it to the studios, but basically it was going to be an R-rated movie one way or another, and the budget that they were asking for something like, an underwater city that has gone into chaos was just too much for the studio's stomach. They couldn't justify a budget like that for an R-rated film, because an R-rated film fundamentally cuts down a chunk of your viewing population. So it was out of question. Wasn't going to happen, and it had been tossed around a couple other times, both by Ken Levine looking to see it get turned into a movie, and other people who were interested in turning it into a film. Well, it's finally happening. Netflix is finally going to do it. So Netflix is probably now one of the more risky film production companies. At least for the way that they distribute movies. I'd probably argue A24 and some of the newer production studios are even more risky in the type of content that they produce. But in the case of Netflix, they are picking up stuff that I don't think we would have ever seen come from a studio prior. So Netflix is really picking up quite a few interesting IPs to turn into content. What we don't have right now is there are no directors, there are no writers attached to the story. So I think it is literally fresh ink on paper, and that's when they came out to announce it. If it's this early in development, it's unlikely that we'll see anything for 2 years. But 2 years from now, we might finally see the world of what is it, Ryan, blanking on his name, but the world of Bioshock being realized in full film, which will be pretty great if you're a fan of the franchise. I don't know if it'll be mediocre. I don't think anybody can really say that, but it follows a long lineage of film adaptations of video games that have not been great. Hopefully this one is one of the many to turn that around. Speaking of movies to film, actually, Uncharted is finally having movies reviews coming in. I think it comes out this weekend. from all sources, it's a pretty decent movie. It's probably one of the best video game adaptations, or movie adaptations of a video game, which we haven't had a lot of great ones. We had like maybe your best ones being like Mortal Kombat and the first Resident Evil, actually from the same director. So that's about as far as we got. Things like Doom and Mario and films like that have been tried to adapt in the past and just miss the mark over and over again. So apparently Uncharted actually captures the character really well, at least of Drake being in his like late teenage, early 20s, opposed to what we see him in the games. I'd say it's probably like predates Uncharted 1 by a good bit, but after like the flashback periods that you see in Uncharted 4 and Uncharted 3, it looks like it captures the theme correctly. It's just a matter of whether or not it really captures like the character interactions and the feeling that you get when you watch the game or when you play the game. It's just it's going to be hard to sort of capture the feeling you get playing through the game in a movie, but from the very looks of it, at least they're capturing the huge set piece action sequences, in the very least, in flying pirate ships and jumping out of planes, that sort of thing. So let's look forward to that. And if you want to pick up a ticket, there are a bunch of deals actually. Not the least of which was PlayStation. I think was offering some discounts on the movie, or free tickets for that matter. So check it out if you're planning on picking it up. We're planning on watching it this weekend. Keep an eye out for discounts on the movie ticket, because I have a feeling it's not bringing people to the theater again. Only Spider-Man can do that, I guess. Same actor though, so I don't know. Weird. All right, next bit of content that we'll go over, Valve being Valve-like. As most people know, Valve has produced the Vive, like 3D VR helmets. But they also announced last year the Steam Deck, which I think a lot of people are excited about, because basically it's a Switch, except it's carrying PC components and can run a lot of your Steam library, which a lot of PC gamers and gamers at this point probably have very healthy libraries. What they did, in the very Valve-like manner, is they're looking at democratizing aspects of the platform. So unlike other companies like Nintendo or PlayStation or even Microsoft to some degree, who really try to keep a closed hardware ecosystem where they are in control of the peripherals and who gets to put stuff on them, who gets to put games on it, and so on. Valve has taken a very different approach with the Steam Deck. They're basically saying, hey, if you want to, put on any type of OS, you're free to do that. You can treat it as a developer kit and do what you'd like with it. And the latest thing that they're doing now is they've released the CAD files for the Steam Deck itself. And previously, they already said the faceplates on the Steam Deck can be swapped out for different faceplates. But by them releasing the CAD files under a open source license, it means that anybody has the engineering drawings and the exact measurements of the hardware itself to go about making their own peripherals, which is pretty awesome, because usually, if you want to make something for the PlayStation 5, beyond reverse engineering something, you'd have to apply specifically for a license with Sony per se to get the CAD files so that you can make peripherals, and it has to be officially sanctioned and allowed by Sony unless you reverse engineered it. In this way, by them releasing the CAD drawings and making it available to anybody on an open source license, it means anybody can make peripherals for it. It does not have to be licensed by Steam or by Valve, and there's going to be kind of this open market for peripherals and add-ons and anything that can snap into the faceplate portions of it. So at a minimum, we'll get new faceplates from anybody who grabs the CAD files and can rapidly start producing new faceplates. You can expect things probably like new grips, battery extenders, lights, who knows what. Any bit of anything for it can be engineered if you have the proper mechanical drawings, which is what they did. The other cool side about it is if you have the CAD files, you can easily start turning that into 3D printable drawings. So anybody can then design something, and they can then open source, say, new faceplate scripts and all that stuff through available 3D drawings that you could pull down on, pull off the internet yourself and print if you have a 3D printer. So it's kind of a neat way of approaching it. It's a very Valve way of approaching accessories and peripherals for their Steam Deck. I think part of it too is that they're just not expecting like a huge success, like say the Switch, but they'll find like a kind of a niche market for this, and this will be a stepping stone from their next hardware. Valve is kind of like a weird company in which they are constantly learning. You can kind of see it in the way that they develop products and change their business model. And I think the Steam Deck looks at the Steam library that everybody has and goes, how do we pull it away from the PC and make it bring it into a gaming place where more people can enjoy it. I kind of think this is another half step that we kind of see along the line of a lot of Valve innovations, including like their Steam machines, like the like OS that they have, Steam OS, to run games. All that stuff I think is kind of like these stepping stones that are taking us closer and closer to Steam or Valve re-envisioning how people enjoy games in a way that's more open than the console platforms themselves. So hats off to Valve doing Valve things. All right, in a very turn of stories, we're going to focus on Nintendo now. Nintendo, if you've been following along, is a company that is very protective of their IPs, and for good reason. They spend a lot of money and a lot of time investing in their characters and kind of controlling it. And you kind of see the same assertion over controls over their IP as you might see from someone like Disney, who very tightly controls their IPs. The downside of this is that we've seen Nintendo over and over again kind of aggressively go after their fan base. So you could argue that, unlicensed content that use, Nintendo characters, Nintendo music, and the like are indications of how much people like Nintendo. But at the same time, Nintendo really doesn't like anybody using their intellectual properties without, official sanctioning from Nintendo. And this has led to some annoying things like people posting fan videos that got DMCA notices by Nintendo, people creating their own music that got DMCA takedowns by Nintendo, even people reviewing their games and using video of their game, to post a review, and then Nintendo issuing a DMCA takedown because it's using their video content, even though it's someone's gameplay, as grounds for having the content removed if they don't like it. So Nintendo kind of has this like two-faced persona that they have. Whether you agree with it or not, it's basically, hey, we're this family-friendly company, but also we will aggressively go after anybody that we don't like using our IP in a way that we don't officially sanction and we don't like. And it kind of puts them at odds sometimes with the fan base that supports their games. So the latest thing that they've been doing is they've been pretty aggressively going after hackers. And when I say latest, it's not really latest. They've been doing this for years. I think there was a pretty high-profile case during the GameCube era that saw a Japanese citizen who was hacking, I think, the Game Boy 3DS and selling the hardware to hack it. And selling ROMs as well, getting quite a strong lawsuit against them and seeing them getting put in prison for a long time. This is in Japan. The same sort of efforts haven't normally been met the same way in the US, even though the US has some pretty weird laws about hacking hardware, and the sort of broad definition of what hacking means in the US court systems. It's kind of up to the companies to bring it to courts and try to argue that. And, not a lot of companies actually do that. But Nintendo, in this case, did. So they went after this person called Gary Bowser, appropriately, who was a Canadian and was living in the Dominican Republic. he was extradited by, I think, CIA from the Dominican Republic and brought into federal prison until his trial. And his trial was actually just saw the resolution a couple days ago. So the details of this trial was that he was part of the hacking group, Team Executor. They had been going about creating hacks for everything from the NES Classic to the PlayStation Classic. They hacked the 3DS, they hacked the Xbox 360, and they hacked the Switch. And the way they did that was by manufacturing these sort of hardware hacks that would basically short circuit the protective hardware that they have in place by like basically bridging a circuit or going through another chip that would spoof the information that the system was looking for to go ahead and run the software. And this sort of hack has been around for a long time. It was around during the PS1, where hardware hacks were pretty common to allow yourself to build or burn your own PlayStation discs and run them. But Nintendo has basically very aggressively pursued it and has gone after Team Executor in general, who has been responsible for manufacturing the hardware, distributing the hardware, running a website that promotes the hardware. But as to my knowledge, they weren't responsible for distributing ROMs. They basically allowed the ability for you to run ROMs on their hardware. So here you have this company that has been functioning on this premise and building and distributing these hacking chips. Well, they were the leader of Team Executor was found and charged on 11 felony counts of conspiracy to circumvent technology measures and to traffic in circumvention devices, which are pretty serious charges. You have a federal felony on you, and you lose your right to vote in most states. You lose a lot of your rights, and sometimes you don't even get those rights restored when you are released from prison. Not to mention that he's been in prison for 16 months already, and this is prior to hearing any sort of hearing, or prior to getting any sort of trial or conclusion to the trial. Basically he was charged with $10 million in damages. That's what Nintendo was charging against him. That was supposed to be paid to Nintendo. The court claims that he is actually responsible for over $150 million in damages. The way they kind of came up with that amount was to look at publishers who won't get paid because someone's running a free ROM on hardware. The people who are publishers who publish those games, Nintendo themselves, who are selling the hardware. And so this is what kind of equates the $10 million price tag that Nintendo put on it. The court settled with a $4.5 million settlement that he still has to pay back to Nintendo, and serving 40 months in federal prison as part of a sentence. What's weird is Nintendo wanted to push it further. They want to seek 5 years in prison. And what his lawyers are doing, Gary Bowser, they're seeking to reduce the sentence to 19 months in prison, of which 16 months were already served. So it'd be 3 months in prison plus the $4.5 million in restitutions to Nintendo. What's very strange and very Nintendo-like, and this is kind of the duplicitous side of Nintendo, whether you agree with their actions or not, is that they then created a press release and were distributing it to news outlets to be like, look, we finally nabbed this guy. I think what's weird about this whole thing, and what I rubs me the wrong way, is that the aggressive approach to them pursuing people like Gary Bowser, what they did was reverse engineer a way to circumvent hardware that they purchased or other people's purchased, and they were distributing a device to get around it. Now, this applies in a bunch of places. Like, you could potentially have a device that you sell that helps jam cellular signals because you reverse engineered it. It's not really legal to have those either. But under like these fuzzy laws, it basically allows them to go after people who have found weaknesses in the hardware themselves itself, and make a business out of creating hardware that gets around it, which is like a dubious legality area, which the U.S. finally decided on Nintendo's side and says actually that breaks laws and they have to go about it. It's the weird like parading it around and looking to get a higher sentence on Gary Bowser that I think is where things get a bit crazy, because in most cases, although these people are making money off of a hack, it's not like these people are going around going like, I know what I want to do. I just want to make Nintendo suffer, or like, they consider it a criminal organization. But in a lot of times, these are just like fans or people who are game enthusiasts that are looking at ways of making it cheaper to game. They're making a lesson out of this, is really what they're going after, is they want to create an example out of individuals. So they seek high sentences to try to dissuade others from doing it, which is quite an authoritarian way of dealing with the problem. And I know that it's kind of impossible to make hardware that is hack proof. So if you can't create like a wall large enough, you just start going after the people who go underneath it in exceedingly more and more draconian ways. And this is how Nintendo's pursued it. Agree with it or not, I think they do have a right to pursue their business interests. They do have a right to protect their hardware. I see it more as distributing their IP. So ROM distribution, I think, is the big crime, not creating methods in which you can create ROMs. People who are hacking the software and making that software largely available and finding distribution networks and making it free for people is the people who are truly basically taking software that people spend a lot of time creating and getting it for free. It is important work, though. It is important work, though, because basically the ROM community is also like wholly responsible for basically preserving a lot of games in their current state, because it's kind of apparent that a lot of publishers are just not that interested in servicing their old games, especially for not collector, but I guess like historical reasons. So the publishers aren't willing to do it. These hacking communities that get the ROMs in some capacity and illegally distribute them are the ones that are preserving these games in the state that they were originally and are making it available to people who are kind of enthusiasts about that. And like I said before, it's one thing that the enthusiasts that are like trying to maintain like old SNES games and finding ways to play those like they were on CRTs. It's another thing for people who are taking Switch games and basically pirating games that companies have not yet made their profit on and kind of eating away from those profits. So I can understand Nintendo's push to go and try to stamp this out. I think it's just the draconian ways in which they're pursuing it and kind of the parading around and trying to make examples of people, which I think is very odd, especially for a company that kind of shows the happier side of games often and tries to make that sort of their brand. So that's all the news we have for today. If you enjoyed the program, like I said, every week we do this at 6 p.m. Eastern time on both Twitch and YouTube Live. If you want your game news in a digestible way that kind of focuses more on the industry and the inner workings of it all, then we're here for you. Additionally, there's usually one other person here that I do this program with, Eric. Next week he'll be back and we'll be talking about the latest news, and I think we're going to do a segment that is going to go over the most influential games of all time. That will be a list of games that we bring up that I think had sort of like ripple effects to the industry and the way games were designed after it. And there's quite a few generations that kind of saw these like massive changes in the way game design was done. So if you're interested in that topic, join us next week.